So, Brian,
Yes.
not to put you on blast, but I think this is the second day in a row you've worn a Last of Us shirt. Am I correct?
It may be the second day in a row.
Gotcha.
And by second day, you mean like the second week? In a row? Then yes.
Oh.
Because I wear them every day.
Okay. Oh, all right. So you're on day 8.
Exactly. There we
Okay,
go.
gotcha. Yeah, and you've got like I know you've got a little Last of Us picture on your Twitter.
I do. I have a little bit of an obsession with narrative games.
Gotcha.
And so, well, what I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
Is so back in Ohio at my university, I took a game analysis class, and so we had this super interesting discussion, which was Ludology versus narratology, which is essentially gameplay versus narrative. And so it's all these kids who are obsessed with games, and our teacher's like, you need to choose either narrative or gameplay, and you have to stick with one. So I was very interested to see what you would pick.
If I had to pick one,
If you had to pick one, do you think you could pick?
Like as a preference?
As a preference,
I think
yes.
I'm a very much a gameplay first type of
Really?
dude. I think that's the part I love about games, but I also, like, that's with a huge asterisk at the end of it because
that's true.
What's most interesting to me though is the games that blend those two and seeing that sort of seamless transition. Like I love gamey ass games. I love your Pac-Man Championship editions and all that stuff, but I also loved The Walking Dead. So I don't know.
That's true. See, I would go the opposite. I would say I'm much more of a narrative guy.
Interesting.
Because I feel like in terms of like being inspired by games, I feel like, you know, you have like Peggle and Pac-Man, which are like your typical like just gameplay games.
2 of the 5 best games ever.
You think so?
I kind of do, actually. Peggle's up there for me, but that's another conversation
See,
for
but
another
like
time.
for me, it's hard for me to get inspired by games like that because like I'm inspired by like Mass Effect, The Last of Us, Gone Home.
Right.
And Gone Home's like the perfect example of like a narrative game because people are like, this is a walking simulator. You just walk around and do nothing.
Yeah.
But for me, there was such a strong story for that, and that like, when you play a game, for me, it's like, I want to play a game that like could make me almost cry.
Right.
Whereas if you're playing Peggle, like Peggle's a great game, or like Pac-Man's a great game, but it's just like, I'm just playing a game, blowing things up.
I don't know if
and
you've
that's
ever
it.
gotten an extreme fever 5 levels in a row in Peggle, you will cry. It's a beautiful feeling.
You just hear that music and you're just like, yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's such an ode to joy. It's a very emotional song.
I'm surprised, like, but the thing is people get so fired up about it. Like, people get so passionate about, like, no, like, you need to play games that have a good story. And then it's like, no, you need, like, then it's not a game. Like, people are like, Gone Home's not a game. People are like, The Last of Us isn't a fun game.
Right.
But they're so good to me. Like, they're so ingrained in my personality.
There are 2 preconceptions that bother me about those arguments. One is that one is that it matters whether or not it's a game, because it totally doesn't. Like, who cares? And also, I've never been totally clear why Gone Home gets shit for being a walking simulator, but nobody said that about the Stanley Parable.
Right,
like,
exactly.
It kind of weirds me out that there's one gets away with it because it's comedy and one doesn't. Also, the other thing that bothers me is the idea that games have to be fun.
Yeah.
I don't totally believe that either. Because Last of Us is grueling. I remember we got our copy of The Last of Us in right before E3, and I started it and had trouble getting back into it when I got home, solely because I was like, I'm already exhausted, and this is just such an emotional slog. But like, whatever. Not all movies are fun action movies.
Exactly.
You know?
But it's like, I don't know. And then the argument is like, there's a guy who's known as like the father of FPS games. I forget his name, but he said like, in video games should be like porn movies, and that there should be a story, but it should not be essential to what's going on. And I feel like that's completely counterintuitive, and I feel like it's kind of limiting to what video games can be.
I think so. I think that's an old way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and we saw that with Gone Home and The Last of Us, and we see that with Mass Effect, where you can have these extremely like deep stories that can really like touch someone.
I guess I try to sometimes sympathize with, like, I try to put myself in the mindset of the people who feel threatened by games like Gone Home, and I don't know. I guess what I'm not understanding is what the threat is. Like, how does having a game like Gone Home affect the other 99.9% of games that are about killing people? Like, those games are going to exist no matter what. Gone Home's existence is not going to derail the rest of video games. There's going to be dumb action games forever. And I was like thinking about this last night watching TV. I was like, TV and movies, if you look at the percentage of them that are about violence, specifically gun violence versus games, it's totally disproportionate. And part of that is because shooting is a fun mechanic, but the other part of that is that we started out as like a medium that was purely recreational, goof-off, arcade, few minutes of fun type stuff.
Right.
And I don't know, we're evolving. I
Yeah.
feel like things are progressing and it's interesting.
I think it's kind of like people are afraid of change because we started off, of course, with these arcadey games where you just score the most points, but now we're starting to branch out, and I think that scares a lot of people. But for me, what worries me is that, you know, like when you play a game, like I have a buddy, my buddy Chris, when I was playing Metal Gear Solid 4, he came over to my place and I'm playing this game and it's, you know, that game has like 45-minute cutscenes.
Yeah.
And he comes over and he's like, this is the biggest piece of garbage I've ever seen in my life. This is not a game. And it's like, it's scary to me that people are gonna take that as like, this is not a video game.
Right.
And to me, it's like, no, this is what video games, this is what their potential is. We have so many ways we can go with video games.
Totally. There's absolutely room for both.
Exactly.
I guess like people, I think it comes primarily from just a fear of change.
Yeah.
And people being like, this isn't video games as I know them, this isn't video games the way they were when I was 13. Well, most of the people complaining about Gone Home are actually 13. That's my theory. But no, like,
on the internet, like, I'm so angry.
Yeah. But I don't know, man. I just, like, I feel like it's such a big-ass medium, and games have been the exact same thing for, like, 15 years now. They've just been the same thing over and over, and I love that same thing. Like, I'm playing Wolfenstein right now, and it's great.
Yeah.
But I want all of it. I want every type of experience this medium can offer.
Exactly. I'm excited to see. I just want to see more. I want to see more different genres. I want to see what video games are capable.
Yeah. I mean, it's an exciting. I think this is the most exciting decade to be someone who cares about video games because we've got all of it right now. Every type of game you could ever want exists in some form. You've got your Dark Souls and your narrative stuff and your like arcadey gameplay stuff and your just dumb first-person shooter stuff, which I love. I don't say that like condescendingly at all. It's just exciting. And then like there's so many weird peripherals and VR things on the horizon that are only going to make gamey games and narrative games better.
Exactly.
It's so, there is no other era I'd rather be born in than today. I love it here in 2014.
This is like the Wild West of video games.
It is. Red Dead Redemption 2.
Confirmed?
Confirming it right now. Valiant Hearts is an intriguing idea for a game, for sure. World War I is woefully underexplored territory in games, and an adventure game seems like maybe the perfect angle to explore it from. The game says it is, quote, freely inspired by the events of the Great War, but more specifically, the story is built out of details taken from actual letters sent during World War I, woven together into an interconnected, multi-perspective...